It was just after midnight on a Saturday, and the neighborhood was dead quiet. Streetlights flickered over empty sidewalks, casting long shadows across the small apartments in Columbus, Ohio. I sat in my living room chair, still in my nightgown, clutching my phone as if it were a lifeline. My hands were trembling. A single text message glowed on the screen. "Mrs. Whitaker, you need to see this. They spent nearly $500 on luxury groceries today. And yesterday, your son's wife asked him for rent money." Along with the words was a photo of a grocery receipt. Wine, imported cheese, fresh seafood, items that could cost me my entire food budget for a month. The name printed at the bottom was unmistakable. Martin Monroe, my daughter-in-law's father. I felt the room spin. For months, my son Caleb had been sending his in-laws money, believing they were drowning in bills. Now here it was, black and white proof of something ugly. I whispered aloud, though no one was in the room to hear. Dear Lord, they've been lying to him. They've been lying to both of us. The tea I had been sipping sat cold on the table beside me, the steam long gone. I knew this night would change everything. My name is Grace Whitaker, and I'm 68 years old. I've lived in Columbus most of my life. For decades, I worked at the local library until arthritis in my knees forced me to retire. These days, I survive on a pension check and Social Security. My life is simple. Mornings are for reading the paper with a cup of black coffee. Afternoons, I tend my small balcony garden, petunias and basil mostly. Evenings, I fix a light meal, maybe chicken soup or a grilled cheese sandwich. I stretch every dollar, counting out coins before I buy anything extra. The one joy that keeps me moving is my son Caleb, 31 years old. He works long hours as an accountant. Honest, reliable, with the same soft smile his late father once had. Caleb married Tessa Monroe 2 years ago, and while I try to welcome her, something in her eyes never sat right with me. She had charm, but it was the sort that felt rehearsed. Her father, Martin, often spoke of how tough things were. The mortgage behind, hospital bills piling up, car repairs they couldn't afford. Time after time, Caleb dipped into his own pocket. Sometimes, I even pulled from my small savings, handing over $100 here, $150 there, because the thought of family going without medicine or rent gnawed at me. I told myself it was just temporary. Families hit rough patches. You help each other through. But as the months rolled on, I noticed details that unsettled me. Tessa's shoes always looked brand new. Her nails manicured at a salon I knew wasn't cheap. Martin claimed he couldn't afford gas money, yet I spotted him once driving a shiny vehicle that didn't match the old clunker he often described. I dismissed it, told myself I was being judgmental. After all, Caleb was happy, and I didn't want to be the interfering mother-in-law. That changed one afternoon at the grocery store. It was a warm Friday in June. I wanted to bring a dessert when Caleb drove me over to Tessa's family home for dinner. So I stopped at the supermarket bakery to buy an apple pie. I stood in the checkout line, pie box balanced in my hands, when the cashier glanced at my name on the debit card. His eyes narrowed. "You're Grace Whitaker?" he asked softly. "Yes," I answered, puzzled. "Caleb's mother?" I nodded. The man, Deshaun Carter, his name tag read, leaned closer, lowering his voice until only I could hear. His tone carried urgency, almost fear. "Ma'am, I probably shouldn't say this, but your son's wife and her father? They come in here every week spending hundreds. Wine, designer cuts of meat, imported goods. They brag about Caleb, helping them with bills. I'd watch you count out coins to pay for pie, while they walk out with carts full of luxuries." My breath caught in my throat. I shook my head. "No, you must be mistaken." "I wish I was," Deshaun said. "I've seen it with my own eyes." I didn't want to interfere, but it reminded me of what happened to my own mother. She lost everything because no one warned her. I must have looked stricken, because his hand briefly touched mine, steady and firm. "Be careful, Mrs. Whitaker. You and your son deserve to know the truth." He rang up the pie as if nothing had happened. The receipt crinkled in my trembling fingers as I left. I stepped into the parking lot, sunlight glaring off the hoods of parked cars. Caleb waited in the driver's seat, scrolling his phone. I should have walked straight to him. Instead, I turned toward the back of the building, slipping behind a row of steel dumpsters. From there, I had a clear view of the entrance. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it in my ears. Was Deshawn telling the truth? Had I, a woman who prided herself on wisdom and caution, truly been so blind? The door slid open with a whoosh, and out walked Martin Monroe. He wasn't carrying bargain groceries. In each hand swung glossy black shopping bags, embossed with golden lettering from a high-end market. His shirt was pressed, his shoes polished. He moved with the easy air of a man, without financial worry. My stomach dropped. Then he walked toward a pearl-white SUV, its paint gleaming, tires thick and new. Not the rusty sedan they always claimed was breaking down. Martin carefully loaded the bags into the trunk, humming as he worked. He pulled out his phone and laughed during his call. Relaxed, carefree. I froze, clutching the dumpster's metal edge, the smell of old produce wafting up. At that moment, the seed of suspicion Deshawn planted began to take root. I returned to Caleb's car, wearing what I hoped was a normal smile. He asked why it took so long. I muttered something about long lines, but inside, my chest was tight with questions. Had my son's kindness been turned into a business for Tessa's family? And if so, how much had they already taken from him? I didn't yet know it, but I was standing at the edge of a discovery that would tear apart my son's marriage and force me, at nearly 70, into the role of investigator, protector, and truth-teller. The following morning, I couldn't shake the sickening feeling that had settled in my stomach. Caleb picked me up as usual, cheerful and upbeat, asking about my plans for the day. He had no idea the storm that was brewing just beneath the surface of my thoughts. As we drove to the cafe where I'd meet Ruth for our weekly catch-up, I glanced at my son, the same boy I raised after my husband passed. He had a gentle heart, always willing to help, never questioning when someone needed him. I couldn't remember a time when he wasn't the first to step in when someone was in need. But I wondered now, was he being used? Ruth Delgado met us at the cafe, as usual. She was in her 70s, a widow like me, and had lived on the same street for decades. Ruth had a sharp eye, and though she never judged anyone, she could read people better than anyone I knew. I didn't mention Deshawn or Martin's SUV at first, but I couldn't help it when I saw Ruth's concerned expression. Grace, you look like you've seen a ghost. What's wrong? I hesitated, then quietly asked her, have you ever noticed anything strange about Tessa's family? Ruth's eyes flickered for a second, but she didn't answer immediately. She sipped her coffee and then set the cup down with a gentle clink. I've heard rumors, Grace, but I thought you'd want to hear from Caleb first. I stared at her, unsettled. What do you mean? She sighed and leaned forward, lowering her voice. Tessa's father, Martin Monroe, he's been spending a lot of time at the grocery store. Not just shopping, but dropping hints about how generous Caleb has been. He's even told the cashier, Deshawn, how lucky they are to have Caleb's support. But I don't think it's gratitude. I think it's a strategy. I sat back, feeling a chill in my bones. Could it be possible? Could they have been playing Caleb all this time? Later that week, things took an even darker turn. I spent the afternoon with Ruth, and as we returned to my apartment, I passed a local library, the same place I used to work before retirement. I had to stop by and pick up a few books, and while I was there, I noticed a familiar face walking out of the back room, Martin Monroe. His face briefly lit up when he saw me, but then it quickly soured, as if he was caught off guard. I could have sworn I saw a guilt flicker across his expression before he smiled. Grace, always a pleasure. His tone was almost too smooth. Martin, what brings you here? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Oh, just a little research, he said, adjusting his jacket. Tessa asked me to look into a few things, help her with some family documents. I nodded, pretending to accept his words. But something didn't sit right. Tessa, why would she need Martin to handle her personal paperwork? And why was he here, in a place I knew he had no reason to visit? I quickly returned to my apartment, the feeling of dread building inside me like a tidal wave. That evening, after dinner, I decided to visit Tessa and Caleb's house. I needed to see for myself, hear it from them. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe my suspicions were based on nothing but coincidence and an overactive imagination. I arrived at their doorstep, pie in hand, and immediately noticed the brand new front door, a recent addition. The door frame was freshly painted, and the decorative light beside it looked out of place. Too new for someone supposedly struggling with bills. Caleb greeted me with a big smile and a hug, but the moment I stepped inside, my heart sank. There were new curtains in the living room, a flat-screen TV on the wall, a model that could cost thousands, and leather furniture that didn't belong. Wow, you guys have really done some nice work here, I said, trying to keep the surprise from my voice. Oh, yeah, Tessa said, appearing from the kitchen. We've been doing some renovating. You know how it is. Caleb works so hard, and we want to make things a little more comfortable around here. I nodded, but my mind was racing. How could a family in such financial distress suddenly afford all of this? I remember the phone calls Tessa made to Caleb in recent months, always asking for more help. Money for rent, medical bills, food. It was as if their lives were a series of crisis after crisis. Yet their luxury purchases contradicted everything they said. As I was about to ask another question, I heard a familiar sound, the garage door opening. Martin walked in, carrying bags from a high-end store. He nodded at me, but there was something about the way he held the bags that made me uneasy. It wasn't just the bags. It was his demeanor. He was walking like a man who didn't have a care in the world, someone who was untouched by any financial strain. Later that evening, Caleb and I sat down to have a quiet talk in the living room. I watched him, his tired eyes, the lines on his face, and I wondered, how long had he been unaware of the truth? How could he have been so blind to the contradictions in their stories? Caleb, I need to ask you something important. I began, my voice soft but firm. Do you ever think about where all the money is going? I mean, Tessa's family is always asking for help, but... His face hardened at the question, but I pressed on. There's been something off for a while, Caleb. Martin's been buying all this expensive stuff, and Tessa's been talking about deals that don't add up. Mom, please, Caleb interrupted, a defensive tone creeping into his voice. I've already told you, they're struggling. It's not easy for them. Tessa's father just doesn't know how to manage things. But Caleb, I saw with my own eyes. I don't think it's just about struggling anymore. I think they've been taking advantage of your kindness. At that, Caleb's expression softened, but only for a second. He looked conflicted, torn between his love for his wife and the unsettling reality that was creeping into his mind. As I sat there, watching my son struggle with the truth, a part of me hoped I was wrong. I wanted to believe this was just a misunderstanding, that my suspicions were misplaced. But the evidence was mounting. I could feel the tension in the air, and I knew, deep down, that this was just the beginning of a much larger confrontation. One that would change everything for Caleb and me. The truth was out there, but it was clear. It wouldn't come easily. After that tense evening with Caleb, I couldn't sleep. The doubts gnawed at me like hungry wolves circling in the dark. How much had they taken from my son? From me? I had to find out. I had to make sure before I said anything more to Caleb. I couldn't risk destroying his faith in his wife and her family without solid evidence. I woke up early the next morning, my mind already working through the plan. I needed to be methodical. Caleb couldn't find out about this until I had everything. Every receipt, every piece of evidence, every conversation that would tie Tessa and Martin's deception together. By 9 a.m., I was on the phone with Deshawn. He had been the first one to raise the alarm, and I had to know if there was more to his story. I knew he was just trying to be helpful, but there was still a lingering doubt. Was he exaggerating, or was he genuinely concerned? I picked up the phone and dialed. After a few rings, he answered, his voice still low and cautious. Mrs. Whitaker? Yes, it's Grace. I hesitated. I need your help. I need to know more about what you've seen. The receipts, the shopping trips, everything. There was a long pause. I could almost hear him weighing his words. Finally, he spoke again. I've been working at that grocery store for years. Mrs. Whitaker. I've never seen anything like it. Martin Monroe and his family, they come in every week, always buying the best of the best. Imported meats, fine wine, seafood, cheeses. Things are way out of their supposed price range. He continued, but it's not just the spending. It's the way they talk about your son. How grateful they are for all his help. Yet the way they waste money is unbelievable. They have no shame, ma'am. No shame at all. I was quiet for a moment, letting his words sink in. Do you have any receipts? I asked, my voice tight with anticipation. I do. I've kept some. They're from the past couple of months. I didn't think it was my place to tell you, but now I feel like you need to know the truth. My heart raced. I had to be careful now. Can you send them to me? I asked, and is there anything else you've noticed? Any other details? Yes, ma'am. I'll send everything over. And one more thing. Martin is very secretive when it comes to his phone. I've seen him swipe through it in a hurry a few times. He doesn't want anyone to see who he's talking to. And Tessa's always texting someone, but she never lets anyone see her screen. That was enough. I had the first piece of the puzzle. I wasn't crazy. The shopping receipts, Deshawn's testimony, and now the strange behavior around the phone. All of it pointed to the fact that something wasn't right. Over the next couple of days, I kept my eye out for anything else that could help. Ruth had become my ally in this, offering me more pieces of information from the neighborhood. She had noticed Martin's truck parked in front of the local law office a few weeks ago, but when she'd asked him about it, he quickly changed the subject. I also paid a visit to the library where I used to work. Ruth told me that she had heard from a friend at the library that Tessa had been looking for family lawyers recently. Why would someone with supposed financial struggles be consulting lawyers? I wasn't sure, but it didn't make sense. I found a file for Tessa's family in my old records. I had an old contact in the library's archive section who helped me pull up public records. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Tessa's family had an expensive history with local businesses, even though they had told Caleb they were struggling. The file also showed loans and mortgages, but nothing added up with the stories Tessa and Martin had told. Their claimed income didn't match the records of their purchases. I printed out everything I could find, every bank transaction, every property record, and then I decided to confront Tessa directly. It was a Friday evening when I decided to visit Tessa. Caleb was working late, and I knew this would be the perfect opportunity to get her alone. I called her earlier in the day, pretending to want to catch up. She sounded excited to have me over. When I arrived, I was struck by the changes to the house. The fresh paint, the new curtains, and the new leather furniture all pointed to the fact that things were far from tight financially as Tessa claimed. Tessa greeted me with a warm smile, but I could see the nervous tension in her eyes. The minute I walked into the living room, I could smell expensive candles burning and hear the faint hum of a new sound system. All of it was luxury, but it didn't align with the stories they told Caleb about being broke. Tessa, I've been meaning to ask you. I began, sitting down across from her. I've noticed some changes here. New furniture, new appliances. I thought you said things were tight. Her smile faltered for a brief moment, but she recovered quickly. Oh, this old stuff? It's just a couple of good deals I found. Nothing special. I didn't buy it. Deals? The last time I checked, a flat-screen TV like that wasn't exactly on sale. Tessa's eyes widened just a bit, but she tried to play it off. Well, it was a gift. I leaned in, my voice calm but firm. Tessa, I've seen the receipts. Deshawn told me about the shopping trips. The wine, the meats, the luxury foods. None of this adds up. So, let me ask you straight. How much longer do you plan on lying to Caleb? Her face went pale, but she quickly stood up. I don't know what you're talking about. I wasn't backing down. I'm not here to make you feel guilty, but I want you to understand something. You've been taking advantage of my son, and I won't sit by and let him keep getting hurt like this. Tessa's eyes narrowed. You have no idea what it's like to be in my position. Caleb promised to take care of us. Caleb's been taking care of you, while you've been lying and taking more than you deserve. At that, she snapped. You don't know anything. You think Caleb deserves better than me? Then why don't you tell him? Let him see how much you hate me. I stood up, shaking my head. I don't hate you, Tessa, but I'm done letting you manipulate him. I left Tessa's house, feeling a heavy weight on my shoulders. I knew what I had to do. The evidence was too strong to ignore. The conversation with Tessa confirmed everything I suspected. It was time to face Caleb with the truth. No more half answers. No more denials. But I couldn't shake the ache in my chest. Confronting Tessa had been difficult, but I still loved my son. I had to protect him from people who would use him, no matter how much it hurt. It was time to stop being silent. Time to protect my son, no matter the cost. The house felt different that evening. There was a weight in the air, an undeniable tension that hummed in every corner. Caleb wasn't home yet, but I knew the time had come. I could feel my heart thudding in my chest, each beat echoing in my ears as I prepared to do something I'd hoped never to have to do. I walked into the living room, my hands slightly shaking as I set down the stack of printed receipts on the coffee table. Each one told a story, one that Caleb needed to hear, one that would break his heart, but also free him from the deception he'd been living in. The door opened, and Caleb walked in, his tired eyes lighting up when he saw me. He smiled, but there was a brief flash of confusion when he noticed a serious look on my face. "Mom, you okay?" he asked, stepping forward. "You look serious." I nodded, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. I couldn't sugarcoat this. Not anymore. "Caleb, sit down. We need to talk." His expression shifted immediately, concern flooding his features as he took a seat across from me. I could feel the familiar bond we shared, that quiet understanding between a mother and her son. But today, I had to shatter it just a little. "What's this about, Mom?" Caleb asked, his voice low. "Is everything okay?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I had to be strong, for both of us. "Caleb, I've been watching, listening, and asking questions, and I'm afraid what I found doesn't match up with the story you've been told about Tessa's family." He frowned, his confusion turning to defensiveness. "What do you mean? What story?" I pushed the stack of receipts toward him. "These are from the last few months. Each one shows luxury items bought by Martin and Tessa. The kind of stuff they've been telling you they couldn't afford. Imported meats, fine wine, seafood, designer clothes. These are not the purchases of a family struggling to pay rent or medical bills." Caleb stared down at the receipts, his face paling slightly as he picked them up, his hand shaking ever so slightly. I don't understand. Why would they lie?" "Because they've been taking advantage of you, Caleb. They've been using your generosity as a cash machine, and I think you've been blind to it." I could see the pain in his eyes, but he quickly closed them, like he was protecting himself from the truth I was offering him. "Mom, I've heard enough of this. You don't know how hard they're trying. Martin's sick, and Tessa, she's doing the best she can." His voice wavered, like he was trying to convince himself more than me. I leaned forward, my heart breaking as I said the words I never wanted to say. "This isn't about trying, Caleb. It's about manipulation. They've made you believe they need you, when in reality, they've been living off your kindness and your money. They don't need help. They need a free ride." He recoiled at the words. It was the first real shift I saw in him. His posture, which had been rigid, seemed to slump. "But I've been sending them money, Mom, thousands. I just wanted to help." "I know, sweetheart. I know. And that's what makes this so painful. You're a good man. You've always tried to do the right thing. But sometimes doing the right thing means stopping. And I need you to understand that your kindness has been used against you." Caleb's eyes flickered with confusion, then anger. "No, Mom, you're wrong. I don't want to hear this. Not about them." I could see it in his face, the internal battle he was fighting. I knew he wanted to believe in the story he had been told, but I wasn't going to let him live this lie any longer. "Caleb, I'm not trying to tear your world apart. I'm trying to protect you." I paused, trying to find the right words. "You've been helping them because you love them, but love doesn't mean sacrificing your own future. And it sure doesn't mean letting them steal from you, from us." His voice cracked, and for the first time, I saw the vulnerability in his eyes. "I trusted them, Mom. How could I have been so wrong?" I reached out and placed my hand gently on his. "You weren't wrong to trust them, Caleb. You were wrong to ignore the signs. You didn't want to believe the truth, and that's okay. But now you need to see it. Caleb stood up suddenly, pacing back and forth. I could see his mind racing, the confusion and betrayal written all over his face. I'm not sure I can forgive them for this, he muttered, shaking his head. How can I look at Tessa the same way after this? I stood up and gently pulled him into an embrace, holding him for a moment longer than usual. It's okay. You'll figure this out. This isn't the end, Caleb. It's just the beginning of seeing clearly. He pulled away, looking at me with tears in his eyes, and for the first time in months, I saw a sense of determination in him. I'm going to confront them, Mom. I can't keep living this lie. I nodded, my heart heavy but proud. Whatever you decide, Caleb, I'll be here. Always. Just remember, you deserve to be treated with respect, and love isn't about giving and giving until there's nothing left. He walked out of the room, but I could hear the sound of resolve in his footsteps. Tonight would change everything. As Caleb left the house, the air felt thick with anticipation. I didn't know how this was going to end, but I knew one thing for sure. It was a moment of truth for my son. Tess and Martin's lies had been exposed, but the real Tess was ahead. Would Caleb choose the truth over his love for his wife and her family? Or would he choose to live in a world of lies for the sake of keeping peace? The battle for Caleb's future was just beginning, and it was a fight that would change the course of our lives forever. The next few days passed in a blur. I didn't hear from Caleb for hours at a time, and every time I picked up the phone, I hesitated, wondering if he was ready to talk. The weight of the truth I had laid out for him hung in the air, and I knew this wasn't going to be easy for him. But what I didn't know, what none of us could have predicted, was just how quickly things would escalate. Finally, on the third night after the confrontation, Caleb called me. His voice was rough, and for a moment, I thought he might have been crying. Mom, I did it. I froze. I could hear the relief and pain in his voice, but also the sound of someone who had just crossed a line they couldn't uncross. You did what, sweetheart? I told Tessa. I told her everything. I showed her the receipts. I told her I knew about the shopping sprees, the lies, everything. I exhaled slowly, trying to steady my breath. How did she react? Caleb paused for a moment, his voice shaking. At first, she tried to deny it. She said I was misunderstanding things. She even told me I was just being paranoid. But when I showed her the receipts, when I told her I knew about the luxury items she'd been buying, she lost it. She screamed at me, Mom. It was like nothing I'd ever seen before. I could hear the anguish in his words. I knew this wasn't easy for him. Breaking free from someone you loved, someone you trusted, was never going to be simple. And then what happened? I asked, keeping my voice calm, even though I felt the weight of everything he was going through. She blamed you. She said this was all your fault for putting ideas in my head. She tried to turn it all around and make me feel like I was the one who was wrong. But then when I pressed her, she admitted everything. She said they had been lying to me the whole time. They didn't need help. They just wanted my money, Mom. She said it was all part of the plan, a scheme. I held my breath. Caleb continued, his words tumbling out now, almost in a rush. And you know what else? She said Martin was in on it from the start. They decided I was a good target. Steady job, generous heart. They planned to use me the whole time. I felt my chest tighten, the anger bubbling up. I wanted to reach through the phone and shake some sense into Tessa, but I kept it in check. This was Caleb's battle. It wasn't long before the legal fallout began. Caleb's decision to confront Tessa didn't just change his marriage. It set off a chain reaction that would rock both their worlds. The following morning, I got a call from Caleb's lawyer. Grace, he began, his tone professional but firm. We need to talk. Caleb has filed for divorce, and he's already made some strong points about the financial manipulation. The evidence you and he have gathered will be vital, but we need to act quickly. Tessa and Martin will fight this. They'll try to deny everything. I could hear the tension in his voice. Divorce wasn't just a matter of feelings. It was about assets, money, and a very public unraveling of everything Tessa and Martin had built. What's next? I asked, my heart pounding. What happens now? The first step is securing the assets. We'll be asking for a temporary restraining order on any property transfers. We've got enough evidence to argue that they've been living off Caleb's generosity without disclosing the full truth. But the next step is to prepare for a battle in court. I felt a chill run down my spine. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. It was war, and Caleb was the one caught in the middle. By the time I heard from Caleb later that day, he was exhausted, emotionally drained, but he sounded more resolved than I'd heard him in months. "Mom, I'm doing the right thing." I smiled softly, even though I knew the road ahead would be long and painful. "I'm proud of you, Caleb. You're doing the hardest thing a person can do. You're choosing the truth over the easy way out." He didn't reply immediately, but then, after a moment of silence, he added, "They tried to call me today. Tessa, she begged me to come back, said everything could go back to normal if I just helped them one more time. But, Mom, it's all a lie. I'm done." I felt a relief wash over me, mixed with a deep sadness. This wasn't the future Caleb had envisioned. He had married Tessa with hopes of building a life, a family, but now all of that was shattered. "And Martin?" I asked gently. "He's the same," Caleb said, his voice bitter. He tried to play the victim. He said I was overreacting, that Tessa didn't mean any harm. But I can see it now. They were in this together from the start. It was all part of their plan. The whole time. A few weeks passed, and the court hearings began. The entire process felt like a blur. Meetings with lawyers, endless paperwork. The painful feeling of watching Caleb break down as he relived the moments when Tessa and Martin had manipulated him. But there was a strange kind of justice in the air. The evidence was clear. The receipts, the bank records, and the testimonies from Deshawn and Ruth, combined with Caleb's own observations, left no room for doubt. Tessa and Martin were guilty of exploiting Caleb's generosity, and it was only a matter of time before the court decided their fate. In the meantime, I made sure Caleb had everything he needed. He moved into a small apartment, trying to rebuild his life piece by piece. But it wasn't just the material things. He was still picking up the pieces of his heart, and that was something only time could heal. The court finally rendered its decision. Tessa and Martin were forced to return some of the money they had taken, and the divorce was finalized. Caleb walked away with his dignity intact, though the emotional scars would remain for a while. For the first time in months, I saw Caleb smiling again, even though it was a weary smile. He had been through hell, but he had emerged on the other side, a little wiser, a little stronger. He didn't blame me for what happened. He knew, deep down, that I was only trying to protect him. But I couldn't help but feel a sense of guilt that this was the life he had been forced to live. And yet, as I looked at him, really looked at him, I knew that no matter how difficult the journey had been, we would face it together. Caleb had made his choice, and in the end, it was the right one. We were finally free of Tessa and Martin. But more importantly, Caleb was free to live a life that was his own, without guilt, without manipulation, and without being controlled by people who didn't truly love him. The months that followed the divorce were tough, but there was a sense of relief in the air. Caleb slowly started to rebuild his life. He moved into his own apartment, one that wasn't tied to the memories of Tessa and Martin. At first, it felt like the weight of the world was on his shoulders. He still carried the emotional scars of being manipulated by the people he loved most. But there were small victories. Caleb started to focus on his work again, something he had neglected during those painful years. He even took a weekend trip to the coast with some old friends, a chance to breathe and remember that life wasn't always about sacrifice. It was about living for himself, not for anyone else's demands. I watched him grow stronger every day. He learned to trust again, though it would take time. Slowly, the walls he'd built around his heart began to soften, just enough to let in the warmth of new possibilities. And then one evening he called me. His voice was lighter than it had been in months, and there was an undeniable joy in it. "Mom, I met someone. Her name's Regina. She's amazing, and I think she might be the one." I felt a rush of emotion, tears welling up in my eyes. It wasn't just happiness for him. It was the overwhelming feeling of relief. Caleb was finally opening up again, and he had found someone who valued him for who he was, not for what he could give. Regina wasn't just someone who respected him. She understood his past, and she didn't try to change him. She never asked for anything, but offered support and kindness when it was needed most. Caleb was finally able to trust again, but this time, he was making sure it was with someone who deserved it. As a mother, there's nothing more satisfying than seeing your child learn from the past and move forward with strength. Caleb had finally broken free from the chains of manipulation, and he was starting to live the life he deserved. The journey had been difficult, but it also taught me a lot about boundaries, about love, and about self-respect. I had done everything I could to protect my son, but in the end, it was his courage to face the truth that truly set him free. I remember the first day I saw Caleb after divorce was finalized. He walked into my apartment, and for the first time in months, his smile wasn't forced. It was genuine. It was a smile of a man who had regained control of his life, and it was a smile of someone who had learned to put himself first. Now, when I look back on everything that happened, I realize that sometimes the hardest thing to do is to speak the truth, even when it hurts. But in the end, the truth always brings freedom. Freedom from lies, freedom from manipulation, and freedom to live authentically. If you've learned anything from Caleb's story, I hope it's this. Never let anyone take advantage of your kindness, your generosity, or your love. Set boundaries. Speak up. And remember that you deserve to be treated with respect, no matter what anyone else says. If you're in a situation where you feel like someone is taking advantage of you, it's time to act. Trust your instincts. Don't let fear or guilt keep you silent. Speak the truth and protect yourself because you are worth it. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself or someone you love? What was the hardest part of breaking free from a toxic situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that could change your life. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. And remember, you deserve to be free. Free from lies, free from manipulation, and free to live your truth.